This is a cafe. This is a revolution. We French love cafes and protests. Maybe we love protests a bit too much. Okay, but what's the connection? Well, if I told you that cafes ended the monarchy, would you believe me? And more than 300 years after Jeanne d'Arc, it was women who helped change the course of history. We are going to visit the cafes of 18th century Paris to back up our claims, brewing coffee and revolution at the same time, and, after this video, you will never see the French Revolution the same way again. It all began in 1686, when the first café, Le Procope, opened its doors in Paris. It was the first of many, as its popularity rose. By the mid-18th century, Paris had hundreds of cafés, frequented by everyone from bourgeois merchants to radical intellectuals. They were hubs of social interaction, where patrons discussed art, science, and, most importantly, politics. Cafés were the breeding grounds of the Enlightenment. Thinkers like Voltaire, Diderot, and Rousseau would gather in these establishments to debate ideas that challenged the very foundations of the old regime. The café was a space where ideas flowed as freely as the coffee. Liberty, equality, and fraternity, concepts that would ignite the revolution, were poured over in these very rooms. Cafés were not the only places where coffee and revolution were brewed together. The salons, hosted by powerful women, were gatherings of the greatest thinkers of their time. Salons played a key role in the lead-up to the French Revolution by fostering Enlightenment ideas that challenged the monarchy and aristocracy. These social spaces, often hosted by women like Madame Geoffrin, were hubs for intellectual debate on politics, much like the cafés. Salons also acted as networking spaces for future revolutionaries, including Mirabeau, Robespierre, and Condorcet, who discussed reform and revolution. They helped cultivate a public sphere where revolutionary ideas gained legitimacy. Women in salons, such as Olympe de Gouges and Madame Roland, also played a crucial role in advocating for rights and equality. In essence, salons shaped the intellectual climate that fueled revolutionary thought and helped turn Enlightenment ideals into action during the French Revolution. The French Revolution didn't begin in the grand halls of Versailles, but in the bustling cafés of Paris. It was here that the Third Estate, the common people, found their voice. Cafés became informal headquarters for revolutionary movements, where plans were hatched and alliances forged. Cafés like the Café de Foy became infamous for hosting fiery speeches that incited crowds to action. What were people drinking in cafés and salons? Coffee was the cornerstone of Parisian café culture. Introduced to Paris in the late 17th century, coffee had become immensely popular by the 18th century. People often drank Turkish-style coffee or variations made with sugar and sometimes milk. Hot chocolate was a luxurious and fashionable drink. It was typically made from cocoa, mixed with water or milk, often sweetened and spiced with cinnamon or vanilla. It was considered a drink for the wealthy and elite, but its popularity was spreading. While not as popular as coffee or chocolate, tea was available in many cafés. It was associated with English and Asian influences and catered to wealthier clientele. There were syrups, lemonades, spirits, and punch too, quite like what we have today. As the revolution gained momentum, café culture turned darker. The debates that once centered on abstract ideals became calls for blood. The attack on the Tuileries Palace, the seat of the executive order, was initiated from the Procope Café. The same cafés that had fostered intellectual growth now became stages for revolutionary fervor. The cries for liberty and equality grew louder, and soon the monarchy itself would fall. And so was introduced the guillotine. Often called the national razor, it became an infamous symbol of the French Revolution. Introduced in 1792 as a humane method of execution, it was designed to ensure equality in death, quick, efficient, and supposedly painless. It replaced older, more brutal methods and was championed by Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotine, although he didn't invent it. During the Reign of Terror, 1793 to 1794, The guillotine became a tool of fear used to eliminate enemies of the revolution, including King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette. Ironically, it was Louis XVI who signed the decree establishing the guillotine on March 2, 1792. It is even said that he suggested to Guillotine the idea of giving the blade a beveled shape. If Louis hadn't meddled, the blade would have been curved. Over 16,000 people were executed by guillotine during the Revolution, from nobility to commoners. While it was intended to symbolize justice and equality, the guillotine also became a chilling reminder of the revolution's darker side: chaos, violence, and the price of radical change. You can visit many key points of the revolution in Paris even today. The Procope Café stands proud in the Saint-Germain-des-Prés neighborhood. The Place de la Concorde, where more than 1,200 people, including Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI, were executed, remains an iconic sight. The Cour du Palais des Tuileries is open to everyone, offering magnificent gardens in the center of Paris. The Bastille Square, where the infamous prison was stormed, now hosts a modern opera and the famous July column. Notre Dame was partially damaged by revolutionaries and, more recently, by fire in 2019. It has since reopened as of December 8th, and it is fantastic. The Place du Carrousel is located near the Louvre Museum, offering a view of the iconic glass pyramid. The Hôtel des Invalides, once a barracks that supplied weaponry to the revolutionaries, now houses Napoleon's tomb, which can be visited. The Paris Council has released an app called Parcours Révolution, featuring a treasure trove of information about the key sites of the revolution. And, of course, it's free for everyone. A great way to explore Paris between two coffees in a café. Let's take a step back to appreciate the legacy of the Procope Café. It was a gathering spot for key figures in history. Voltaire, Rousseau, and Diderot discussed philosophy there, while Diderot worked on his famous Encyclopédie. Benjamin Franklin visited during his time in Paris, and his discussions with Enlightenment thinkers are said to have influenced some amendments in the future U.S. Constitution. Revolutionary figures like Robespierre, Danton, Marat, and Desmoulins also frequented the café, with Desmoulins famously inciting the crowds to storm the Bastille prison. Napoleon himself visited the Procope, and his famous bicorn hat can still be seen there today. By 1793, the monarchy was no more, and the reign of terror had begun. The cafés, once symbols of free thought, became silent witnesses to the rise and fall of revolutionary leaders. But even as the revolution descended into chaos, the cafés' role in shaping modern France was undeniable. They had sparked a fire that changed the course of history forever. The sparks of revolution and Enlightenment ideals needed nests to grow, like the Salon of Madame Roland and the Procope Café. Cafés were not just casual meeting places or spots to sip coffee. They were the crucibles where revolutionary France took shape. These vibrant hubs of discussion and dissent became the lifeblood of political change, where bold ideas brewed as fervently as the coffee. While it would be an oversimplification to credit cafés as the sole driver of the French Revolution, their role as catalysts cannot be overstated. They were the arenas where the Enlightenment's ideals took root among ordinary citizens, where calls for liberty and equality transformed into actionable plans, and where the sparks of revolution were fanned into a roaring blaze. By fostering dialogue, mobilizing the public, and shaping collective will, cafés helped propel a historic wave of change that shattered the monarchy and ushered in an entirely new political era. And so, the cafés destroyed the monarchy.